Hello there. It's been quite some time since I last did one of these videos, and I would just like to clarify this isn't a return to the semi-regularity with which I did them, but during the 10-year anniversary videos I did say that I would upload some footage from Africa, so here it finally is. This video will be divided into two sections, the first of which is a pangolin that I had the absolute pleasure of working with, and the second of which is an interview with an anti-poacher. Now for that part I would like to clarify, the footage doesn't look great. The audio is fantastic and the interview is something I'm incredibly proud of, but being an anti-poaching patrol, we were filming in the dark. And the camera that I used, it was my first time using that in the dark. I didn't know what it would look like. So the footage is quite shaky and the frame rate is incredibly low, but please do stick with it. Roll the title sequence. This delightful creature, somewhat resembling a pinecone, is an African ground pangolin called Barney. He's of particular significance because pangolins are the most sought after creatures by poachers, with their scales fetching high prices on the black market. Barney has already been a victim of the illegal trade, having been rescued and is now to be reintroduced to the wild at this private game reserve. Primarily nocturnal creatures, it's unusual for Barney to be awake and handled in the middle of the day like he is here, hence this enormous yawn exposing most of his 40-centimetre tongue. In Barney's particular case, the authorities that rescued him from the illegal trade were unable to ascertain where exactly he came from, just that he was from the northwest province of South Africa. This game reserve seems to be the ideal place to reintroduce him into a wild environment where he could be monitored and studied. During the day, Barney will have sleeping quarters in a shed, and when he starts to rouse at dusk, he will then be weighed and driven out to a nearby area of savannah so that he can become reaccustomed to the wild and establish his own territory. He will be monitored on each evening outing by a small task force of 2 or 3 people to ensure that he's establishing territory somewhere appropriate. And I am incredibly lucky to be able to say that I have been a part of these task forces. What exactly is a pangolin? Laymen will often compare them to armadillos or anteaters, but this is merely a case of convergent evolution, where 2 lineages with the same ecological niche in separate environments have evolved the same solutions to answer the same problems. For much of Linnaean history, pangolins were classified with xenarthrans like anteaters and armadillos, but molecular analysis of pangolin DNA tells us that they are their own respective lineage within the order Carnivora, a group shared with cats, dogs, bears and weasels. The pangolin group, or Pholidota, currently comprises of 7 living species found in Africa and Asia, all of which range from vulnerable to critically endangered according to the IUCN, that is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, with Barney's species here, the African ground pangolin, being listed as vulnerable. Regarding the biology of pangolins, they have no teeth, instead using their enormous claws to break down anthills and termite nests, and they will then use their mucus-covered tongues to slurp up the insects, which are then ground up in the stomach. They can be particularly fussy eaters, one of the aspects making them quite difficult to keep in captivity. With over 400 identified species of ant in South Africa, Barney here has already turned his nose at a few of them, then going back into the underbrush in search of something else. They will locate their prey via a keen sense of smell, sniffing the air for traces of ant hormones and scent trails. Following the trails of ants, pangolins have an unusual ponderous method of walking, bipedal but with their knuckles just gracing the ground as they carve their way through the undergrowth. Pangolins are perhaps best known for being the only mammals with scales. Unfortunately, the value of their scales is leading to the demise of all pangolin species. In the Oriental world, the scales, similar to rhino horn, are often purported to work as a panacea for most illnesses. Much like rhino horn and human fingernails, pangolin scales are made of keratin and have no medicinal properties. For illegal traders less interested in the scales, the meat of pangolins is also considered a rare delicacy and also expensive. Pangolins are so sought after that they are often believed to be the most illegally trafficked animal, accounting for approximately 20% of the illegal wildlife trade worldwide. In the case of Barney's rehabilitation, he found an abandoned burrow and decided to lodge himself in there, effectively accelerating his own reintroduction into the wild. Over the successive nights, he would be located via his satellite tag and radio telemetry, weighed and then monitored. Sick of being picked up and weighed every dusk, Barney made a beeline for the perimeter of the game reserve, where he might be vulnerable to poachers. Luckily, he was tracked and returned to somewhere more central, where he could live in relative peace. For the sake of Barney's own interests, it would perhaps be best to take a more hands-off approach and simply observe him from afar. To talk about poachers and the challenges faced in the modern world, I joined Rich Ferree on an anti-poaching patrol.
Testing angles. As you know, I'll sort of hold it like this.
Alright.
If it works at all. Suddenly everything has gone out of my head. I can't think of anything to say.
So is it when you try and do something impromptu,
Yeah.
you always forget everything?
But I'll just sort of start
So always write it down.
with sort of the basics, like effectively. So how long have you been working in anti-poaching?
Okay. You going now?
Oh yes.
I didn't hear it start.
I'll start that again. So how long have you been working in anti-poaching?
I've been working in anti-poaching now for coming on almost 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I started off as just a rhino monitor, which involved doing just deploying the anti-poaching team, all that sort of stuff. And over the couple of years, I'm now at the sort of assistant managerial role.
Mm-hmm.
And now I train anti-poaching guys and their dogs. I respond to all incidences as well, and I still do patrols here and there. As well, but I'm more of a managerial role now. But still in the thick of it as well, especially when things kick off as well.
Mm-hmm. And so, how often do you find poachers coming into the reserve looking for rhinos or bushmeat?
Yeah. It depends. We've had a look through all of our previous data. It's really interesting, actually. We found that the most common day that bushmeat poachers come in is Thursday.
Oh.
Like most common, over the past 20 years worth of data that we've collected, Thursday is always a busy day. And I assume that that's because then they can prep the meat on the Friday and then they sell it at the market on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to be like that. And then the most common time that they seem to come in is around the third quarter after the full moon.
Yes.
Just because they know that the full moon is very bright, and anti-poaching teams that are out there, they'll be able to see them as well as them being able to see what they're doing.
Yeah, without torches.
Without using torches. You know, the moon is so bright on a full moon, especially out here, that I can drive with my headlights off. I don't need them. I can just go off with the moon's light, and you know, when you're in sort of situations at full moon, you look for shade for cover because it's shade from the moon's light. Yeah.
And so obviously in recent years there have been some significant global events. One of the major things in coronavirus, that sort of era, was that rhino horn is used in traditional medicine, and they started claiming that that was one that could be used for COVID.
Yes.
Did that affect anything? Did you notice anything?
Not in this area. In this area, we horn trim all of our rhinos. as well as Pilansberg, the reserve closest to us. So actually in our area, it's been, touch wood, very, very quiet with rhino poaching. We did have an incident in 2021 after sort of the first initial portion of the coronavirus pandemic. We did lose a cow and a calf, and that was on New Year's Day. The New Year's Eve, essentially. It was in the early hours of the morning. And they used that because that whole sort of week, there was a lot of fireworks going on around us. And that night, I think we just couldn't really tell. It was a bit too far away for us to tell whether or not it was a firework or if it was a gunshot or not. And we only found them about 4 days later. A lot of evidence is gone, and that's the thing is that rhino poachers, especially, rather than the meat poachers which do it on a fairly regular basis, they know the place. Rhino poachers are very selective. They'll plan their route out, they'll plan their escape route, and they'll plan the date, the time, everything. They'll get information about your movements inside. Whether that's they just catch something at the local tavern or whatever, someone just get a few drinks in them and they let loose something that they don't mean to, and it might seem like it's nothing, but it's enough for them to have some sort of information, and they can work with it as well. So how many people are on site, who's there, what they're doing, all that sort of stuff. So that's the way that they sort of operate. It's almost always there's some level of inside job in hand with rhino poaching.
So when the poachers then come here and they're found by the anti-poaching unit, what does the law permit them to do, and what do they do with the poachers that they apprehend?
So it kind of depends on the type of poachers that you get. The meat poachers, obviously, they're not here for... they're here for things like warthog, impala, wildebeest, things like that. So we can't really do much with them. You can take them to the police if you apprehend them, but all the police does is they spend a night in a cell, and the next morning they go again. And
you find them coming, you get repeat offenders.
Yes, 100%. So there's not really much we can do about that. We've just got to try and discourage them not to come, taking their dogs away, things like that, just because then it takes a poacher 6 months to train up a new dog, or they can buy another one, and that's just a cost to them. So taking away the dogs is also something that we try and do as well with the meat poachers. With rhino poachers, it's a bit different. Obviously, you've now got there's a firearm involved in the mix, and that can be grounds for equal force. But a lot of the time they're so precise that you never even know that they're there. They'll be in and out before you know what's happening. So it's very tricky because it's the same with even the meat poachers. You're always doing it on their terms. So you can have as much anti-poaching guys or whatever, but unless you can have someone stationed every kilometre on a fence line 24/7, they'll always find a way around it. So they'll look for times when there's less people than usual on the farm, stuff like that. So but with rhino poaching, if you get caught, and then the sort of rules of engagement in this country are that if there is direct threat to your life or the life of someone that you have a third party that you have a vested interest in, could even just be a random person on the street, but you can see that they're about to be murdered or whatever, then you can intervene with equal and lethal force. But so unless the poachers fire upon us, we can't really do anything about them. We've got to wait for that. We've just got to try and apprehend them other ways, obviously using the dogs then, using our anti-poaching dogs, trying to catch them down with them, apprehend them with the dogs, bike work, and taking them down like that. So that's really the only way you can do it.
So generally, do you think poaching in the future, especially for rhinos, is it going to get better or worse?
It's a very tough question.
Yes.
I think, to be honest, it's going at a rate of knots, and it doesn't seem like it's slowing down. The statistics might show that it seems like, if you look at the global statistics for white rhino, you'll see that the peak was around 2014, 2015, around at that time, where we were getting 1,000 a year. And it's been slowly teetering down over the past couple of years, where it's been about 600, 700 for the past 2 or 3 years. But that's not really due to much effort of anti-poaching teams. I mean, of course, it makes a hell of a difference. But on the flip side of the coin, there's not as many rhinos as there were 6 years ago. So the poachers can't find them as often. And that's the problem, is that it's sort of a false statistic. It might look like it's declining, but if you think about the overall picture, there's less of them, so they're harder to find by poachers as well. And the other thing is, especially in Kruger National Park and big places like that, they only find carcasses weeks, months later on, so it's a pile of bones. They can't really say for certain whether or not it's how many not known cases have there been. That's the issue with statistics, like the overall numbers. Yes, the numbers are down, and that's good, and I think that anti-poaching efforts have really ramped up in the past 10 years especially.
Okay.
But it's still going at a rate of knots that's kind of scary.
Well, thank you very much for this. Do you have any kind of final words to say?
I will say that for me, the way that I believe things is that the only way to really stop the poaching of rhino is for international trade in rhino horn to be resumed. I feel like that South Africa as a nation, especially, because we hold, I think it's between 80 and 90% of the world's white rhino population, with about 60 to 70% of that being held in private reserves. I think that we have enough stock, and it's a shame that we have to boil it down to this, but rhino horn can be a farmable resource. It grows back every year, but poachers don't want that. Poachers want there to be less of them because it drives the price up even more.
Yes.
I think it becomes more of a rarity, it becomes more expensive, and then they use that to fund other things as well. So for me, a regulated trade, in international trade in rhino horn, is definitely the way forward, because even then the end consumer would much rather, we can give it to them at a much lower price. The end consumer would much rather buy from a reputable resource at a reduced rate than a black market item that's a bit sus, that they could get arrested for eventually. So that's just my thoughts on that matter.
Thank you very much. You've been incredibly insightful.
You're welcome.
Once again, I would like to extend my thanks to Rich for his insightful thoughts there. This is in fact his second appearance on the channel, so I'd be thanking him for that as well. I'd also like to thank the game reserve involved in the making of this video. For legal and security reasons, I won't name them publicly, but you can visit endangeredrhino.org.uk, where you can learn their story and maybe get involved in wildlife conservation yourself.